The morning sun cast long shadows through the purple leaf trees of Proxima's northwestern forest. Dr. Sarah Chen adjusted the straps of her environment suit and checked her oxygen levels for the third time. Even after 6 months on this alien world, she hadn't lost her careful habits. The planet's atmosphere wasn't toxic, but its higher oxygen content meant humans needed filters to prevent oxygen toxicity during long expeditions. A flash of light in the sky caught her attention. At first, she thought it was just another of Proxima's frequent meteor showers, but this light moved differently. It wobbled, it curved, and it was getting bigger. "Base, this is Dr. Chen," she spoke into her comm unit. "I'm tracking what appears to be a small spacecraft. Correction, an escape pod. It's coming down fast in my sector." The pod streaked overhead, trailing smoke and debris. Sarah's scientific mind automatically calculated its trajectory while her legs were already moving. Whatever, or whoever, was in that pod would need help. The impact shook the ground. Sarah ran faster, grateful for the lower gravity that made her movements easier. She followed the trail of broken purple branches and scattered debris, her handheld scanner beeping with increasing frequency as she approached the crash site. The escape pod lay in a small crater, its silver hull scratched and dented, but largely intact. Steam hissed from its cooling systems, mixing with the perpetual morning mist of Proxima b. Sarah approached cautiously, her training kicking in as she scanned for radiation or chemical leaks. "Hello," she called out, activating her universal translator. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen of the Earth Science Federation. I'm here to help." A weak light pulsed from inside the pod, followed by a series of musical tones that her translator processed. The pod's hatch creaked open slightly, releasing a sweet scent like fresh-cut grass. Sarah peered inside and gasped. Curled up in the cramped space was one of the most beautiful beings she had ever seen. The alien looked like an artist's dream of what would happen if you crossed a deer with a willow tree. Its body was slender and graceful, covered in what looked like delicate bark instead of skin. Fine, luminescent filaments that resembled willow branches flowed from its head and back, each one glowing faintly with bioluminescence. Two large, compound eyes like polished amber gems stared back at her. The alien was also clearly injured. Several of its bark-like plates were cracked, and a phosphorescent fluid that Sarah assumed was blood was seeping from multiple wounds. "I'm a doctor," Sarah said softly, keeping her movements slow and gentle. "Please, let me help you." The alien's eyes widened in terror. Its translator crackled to life, converting its musical language. "No, stay back, flesh-eater." Sarah blinked in confusion. "I'm not going to hurt you. You're injured and—" The alien tried to press itself further into the pod, its willow-like tendrils trembling. "I know what you are. Human. Carnivore. We learned about your kind. You devour flesh. You hunt. You have bone teeth for ripping and tearing." Despite the seriousness of the situation, Sarah had to suppress a laugh. Of course, to a species that appeared to be plant-based, an omnivorous human must seem terrifying. She carefully covered her mouth, hiding her allegedly threatening teeth. "My name is Sarah," she tried again, keeping her voice soft. "I'm an omnivore, yes, but I'm also a doctor. A healer. Look." She slowly reached into her pack and pulled out her lunch, a vegetable protein bar. "I eat plants too. Many humans choose to eat only plants." The alien's trembling slowed slightly. One of its luminescent tendrils twitched toward the protein bar curiously. "You consume processed plant matter?" "Yes, and right now I'd like to help stop your bleeding. Those injuries look serious." A series of sharp beeps from Sarah's scanner interrupted them. She glanced at the readings and felt her heart rate spike. The pod's power core was destabilizing. "We need to move," she said urgently. "Your pod isn't safe. The power core is." A loud crack from the pod emphasized her point. The alien's musical tones turned high-pitched with fear, but it still pressed itself away from Sarah. Sarah made a quick decision. "I'm sorry, but we don't have time for this. She reached into the pod, trying to be as gentle as possible while quickly lifting the surprisingly lightweight alien. Its body was warm to the touch, like sun-warmed wood, and she could feel a vibration under its bark-like exterior that might have been its version of a heartbeat. The alien trilled in panic, its tendrils whipping around in distress, but it was too weak to put up much resistance. Sarah cradled it carefully and ran. Behind them, the pod's power core gave one final whine before detonating. The explosion wasn't large, but it would have been fatal to anyone still inside. Sarah didn't stop running until they were safely behind a ridge. She carefully set the alien down in a patch of sunlight, noticing how its tendrils automatically oriented toward the light like leaves seeking the sun. "See," she said, still keeping her teeth covered. "If I wanted to eat you, I wouldn't have just saved you from exploding." The alien's translator processed her words, and its trembling slowly subsided. After a moment, it produced a sound like wind chimes, possibly its species' version of nervous laughter. "I may have made an incorrect assumption," it said. "I am Lura. My ship was attacked by pirates near your system's outer rim. I barely made it to the escape pod." "Pirates?" Sarah frowned. "We'll need to alert the defense stations. But first, please let me treat your injuries. I promise I won't bite." More wind chime sounds. "Your attempt at humor is noted, Dr. Sarah. I accept your help." Lura's tendrils drooped. "Though I admit, I'm feeling rather foolish about my initial reaction." Sarah smiled behind her hand as she began unpacking her medical kit. "Don't worry about it. You should hear some of the stories humans used to tell about each other when we first met. We're champions at misunderstanding each other." As she worked to seal Lura's wounds with medical foam, Sarah couldn't help but marvel at the alien's biology. Up close, she could see that what she'd thought was bark was actually millions of tiny scales, each one capable of shifting to allow for movement. The phosphorescent blood contained structures that looked remarkably like chloroplasts. "You're a sylphid, aren't you?" she asked. "I've read about your species, but I've never met one before." "Yes," Lura confirmed. "Though clearly our educational materials about humans need updating. They focused rather heavily on your predatory attributes." Sarah chuckled. "Well, we do have quite the interesting history. But these days, we're more likely to fight to protect others than to hunt them." "There, that should hold until we can get you to proper medical facilities." Lura's tendrils had gradually relaxed, now swaying gently in the breeze. "Thank you, Dr. Sarah. I believe I may need to revise my understanding of humans. Though perhaps you could continue covering your teeth, just for a little while longer." Sarah laughed and nodded, keeping her hand over her mouth as she helped Lura to a more comfortable position. Above them, the purple leaves of Proxima's forest swayed in the eternal morning light, while in the distance, Sarah's radio crackled with the approach of the rescue team she'd called. This, she thought, was how first contact should be, not with fear and misunderstanding, but with helping hands and open minds, even if those hands belonged to a supposedly terrifying carnivore. The rescue team was still 2 hours away. Sarah glanced at the darkening sky of Proxima, knowing they needed to find better shelter. Even with the planet's longer day-night cycle, the incoming darkness would bring dangerous temperature drops. "We need to move," Sarah said, still carefully hiding her teeth when she spoke. "There's a research outpost about 1 kilometer from here. Can you walk?" Lura attempted to rise, her willow-like tendrils glowing brighter with the effort. After a few wobbling steps, the sylphid's bark-like legs buckled. Sarah caught her before she could fall. "Your sap pressure is too low," Sarah explained, checking her medical scanner. "You've lost too much. Fluid. Sap pressure." Lura's translator chimed with confusion. "Ah, you're trying to use terms I would understand. How thoughtful, for a carnivore." There was a musical note in her voice that might have been teasing. Sarah helped Lura sit back down and reached into her pack. "You need fluids. I have water." The moment Sarah pulled out the water bottle, Lura's tendrils shot straight up in alarm. You're trying to marinate me. What? No, it's just water. You're dehydrated. First you tenderize with your medical treatment, and now you wish to soak me in liquid. Lura's amber eyes flickered rapidly. I may be injured, but I am not so naive about food preparation. Sarah took a deep breath, reminding herself that cultural misunderstandings were normal in xenobiology. Lura, think about it. You're a plant-based life form. Don't you need water to live? Lura's tendrils slowly lowered. Well, yes, but... And haven't you noticed I haven't tried to eat you even once since we met? This is true. Lura's bark-like skin shifted in what might have been embarrassment. Though you could be taking me somewhere to cook properly. Sarah couldn't help but laugh. If I wanted to eat you, why would I have treated your wounds? That doesn't make sense. A series of gentle wind chime sounds came from Lura, her own laughter. When you put it that way, she carefully accepted the water bottle, her tendrils wrapping around it like delicate vines. Though I must ask, why do you keep hiding your teeth? I already know you have them. I was trying to make you more comfortable. That's actually very considerate. Lura took a careful sip of water. Perhaps I should revise my assessment of humans yet again. Their moment of understanding was interrupted by a low growl from the forest. Sarah's hand immediately went to the pulse pistol at her hip. She knew that sound. Proximan stalkers, the planet's apex predators. The crash must have attracted them. Those, Sarah said grimly, are the real carnivores you need to worry about. We need to move. Now. Without waiting for a response, Sarah helped Lura to her feet. The sylphid was still weak, but the water had helped a little. They moved as quickly as they could through the purple forest, Sarah supporting most of Lura's weight. What are you doing? Lura asked as Sarah led them up a steep hill. Stalkers hunt by scent. Moving upwind will help hide us. Sarah's scientific mind kicked in even as they fled. They're actually fascinating creatures. They hunt in packs using complex social structures. Perhaps, Lura interrupted, you could admire their hunting strategies after we're safe. Sarah grinned, forgetting to hide her teeth. To her surprise, Lura didn't flinch this time. They found shelter in a small cave. Sarah helped Lura sit near the entrance, where the last rays of sunlight could reach her bark-like skin. The sylphid's tendrils immediately oriented toward the light, their glow strengthening slightly. You're photosynthesizing, Sarah observed with interest. Yes, though it's not very efficient in this light. Lura's translator conveyed a tone of exhaustion. I need more energy to heal. Sarah dug through her pack again and pulled out several protein bars. These are plant-based. They might help. Lura studied the bars with her compound eyes. You carry plant matter for food, even though you can eat meat. Humans can eat lots of different things. That's part of why we've survived so well. Sarah unwrapped a bar. Many humans choose to eat only plants. Others eat both plants and meat. We can adapt. Adapt. Lura carefully took the bar with her tendrils. On my world, we have strict classifications. Herbivores, carnivores, everything in its proper category. But humans, you choose. We choose lots of things. What to eat, how to live, who to help. Sarah checked her scanner. The stalkers were moving away, probably distracted by easier prey. It's not just about what we can do, but what we decide to do. Lura took a small bite of the protein bar. Her amber eyes widened. This is quite good, actually, though I'm still confused about something. What's that? If humans can choose what to eat, why do you keep such dangerous-looking teeth? Sarah laughed. They came in handy back when we were evolving. Now they're mostly for smiling. Smiling. It's how we show happiness or friendliness. Sarah demonstrated, finally showing her full smile. Lura studied her face with fascination. How strange. You bare your hunting tools to show you don't want to hunt. Humans are very contradictory creatures. You have no idea. Sarah checked her comm unit. Rescue team's still an hour out. Mind if I ask you some questions? I've never had the chance to study sylphid biology up close. Study. Lyra's tendrils twitched. You mean, for eating? For science. I'm a xenobiologist. I study alien life forms to understand them, not eat them. Ah. Lyra's bark-like skin shifted in what Sarah was beginning to recognize as embarrassment. You must think I'm quite foolish, being so afraid. Not at all. Fear of predators is a survival trait. It's kept your species alive. Sarah sat down across from Lyra. But understanding when something isn't actually a threat, that's wisdom. Lyra's tendrils sway thoughtfully. Then perhaps we can learn from each other. You may ask your questions, and I will try not to assume their recipe research. They spent the next hour in fascinating conversation. Sarah learned about sylphid society, their symbiotic relationship with other species on their homeworld, and their remarkable ability to communicate through bioluminescent patterns. In turn, she explained human culture, careful to focus on their achievements in science and art rather than their history of hunting. When the rescue team finally arrived, they found the human and the sylphid deep in discussion about the comparative photosynthetic processes of their world's plants. Sarah's teeth were fully visible as she smiled with scientific enthusiasm, and Lyra's tendrils glowed with interest rather than fear. You know, Lyra said as the medical team approached, I believe the universe may need to create a new classification. Not herbivore or carnivore, but human, a category all your own. Sarah helped Lyra onto the medical transport. I'll take that as a compliment. It was meant as one. Lyra's tendrils reached out and gently patted Sarah's hand. Though I still think those teeth are unnecessarily scary, says the one who glows in the dark. Sarah teased back. Their shared laughter, human and musical, echoed through the purple forest as they headed for safety, leaving behind the remnants of fear and misunderstanding in the growing darkness of Proxima's long night. The medical transport never made it to the base. Halfway through their journey, the vehicle's engine made a horrible grinding noise and stopped working. Sarah looked out the window at the deepening darkness of Proxima's long night, trying to hide her concern. How bad is it? She asked the pilot. The pilot, James, emerged from his inspection of the engine with a grim face. Power cells completely dead. Must have been damaged by electromagnetic interference from the sylphid's crashed pod. Lyra's tendrils curled with worry. How far are we from your base? About 5 kilometers, Sarah answered. But walking isn't an option, not with your injuries, and not with night falling. A low howl echoed through the forest. Then another, and another. Sarah's hand tightened on her pulse pistol. The stalkers had found them again. How many? James asked quietly. Sarah checked her scanner. At least 6, maybe more. She turned to Lyra, whose bioluminescent tendrils were flickering with fear. Stalkers usually hunt in packs of 3 or 4. This many together means they're very hungry. Can your weapon stop them? Lyra asked. The pulse pistol can stun 1 or 2, but not a whole pack. Sarah's mind raced through options. James, send up the emergency beacon. I'll try to hold them off until help arrives. James stared at her. That's insane. You can't fight off a whole pack. I don't need to fight them. I just need to confuse them long enough for help to arrive. Sarah checked her oxygen filter and environment suit. Their hunting patterns are predictable if you understand them. I've studied them for months. You studied the creatures that want to eat us. Lyra's musical voice carried a note of disbelief. Sarah grinned. Humans study everything. Sometimes it saves our lives. She turned to James. Get in the transport with Lyra. Seal all the doors and windows. Don't open them for anything except rescue. Before anyone could argue, Sarah slipped out into the darkness. The purple forest was different at night. The leaves absorbed the starlight instead of reflecting it, creating patches of absolute darkness. Perfect hunting grounds for stalkers. But Sarah had an advantage. She activated her suit's thermal imaging display. Red shapes moved through the cold forest, the stalkers circling their prey. They were beautiful in a terrifying way, with their 6 legs and armored scales. Each one was about the size of a small horse. Sarah moved quietly, placing small sonic devices from her research kit in a wide circle around the transport. The stalkers were smart, but they had one weakness: their sensitive hearing. Inside the transport, Lura watched through the window as Sarah's figure disappeared and reappeared between the trees. The human moved with careful precision, nothing like the clumsy predator Lura had initially imagined her to be. A stalker suddenly burst from the underbrush, charging at Sarah. She dropped and rolled, coming up with her pulse pistol firing. The blue energy bolt caught the creature in its shoulder, making it stumble. But the attack was just a distraction. 2 more stalkers were creeping up from behind. "Behind you." Lura's warning came through Sarah's comm unit. Sarah didn't turn. Instead, she pressed a button on her wrist computer. High-pitched sounds erupted from the sonic devices she planted. The stalkers reared back, shaking their armored heads in confusion. But the victory was short-lived. One of the larger stalkers smashed a sonic device with its tail. Another found a gap in the sound barrier. They were learning, adapting. "Dr. Chen," James's voice crackled through her comm. "Rescue is still 20 minutes out." Sarah looked at her pulse pistol's charge indicator. Not enough power for 20 minutes of fighting. She needed a new plan. Suddenly, her thermal display lit up with new signatures. More stalkers were joining the hunt. Drawn by the commotion, she counted 10, then 12. The largest pack she'd ever seen. "Sarah." Lura's voice held real fear now. "You must come back to the transport." "Can't. They'll break in if I do." Sarah's scientific mind was still taking notes even as she dodged another attack. The stalkers were coordinating, using pack tactics she'd never seen before. Fascinating. They're actually working together to disable the sonic defense. "Please stop admiring the creatures trying to eat you." Lura's musical voice hit an almost frantic note. Sarah laughed despite the danger. "Sorry. Professional habit." She ducked under a swinging tail and rolled behind a tree. "But I think I have an idea. James, when I give the signal, start the transport's horn. Make it one long, continuous blast." The horn. But the power cell is dead. There's enough backup power for that. Trust me. Sarah waited until the stalkers were closing in, then fired her pulse pistol straight up. The blue energy bolt illuminated the forest like lightning. In that moment of brightness, every stalker turned to look at her. "Now, James." The transport's horn blared, impossibly loud in the quiet forest. At the same instant, Sarah activated all her remaining sonic devices at maximum power. The combination of sounds hit a frequency that made the stalkers howl in pain. Sarah ran back to the transport while the predators were disoriented. But one stalker, larger and smarter than the others, recovered quickly. It leaped, knocking her down just meters from safety. Sarah found herself staring into yellow eyes full of alien hunger. The stalker's breath smelled like rotting meat as it opened its jaws. In that moment, she finally understood why Lura had been so afraid of teeth. But Sarah wasn't helpless prey. As the stalker lunged, she jammed her pulse pistol directly into its mouth and fired her last shot. The creature jerked back, stunned but not defeated. It shook its head, preparing for another attack. Then something extraordinary happened. The night lit up with brilliant blue-green light. Sarah turned to see Lura standing in the transport's doorway, her tendrils glowing with blinding intensity. The sudden light confused the stalkers, whose eyes were adapted for darkness. "Get in," Lura called. "I can't maintain this brightness for long." Sarah scrambled to her feet and ran. She dove through the door just as Lura's light began to fade. James slammed the door shut behind them. Inside, Lura collapsed, her tendrils barely glowing now. That was very draining. That was amazing. Sarah checked Lura's vital signs with her scanner. "I didn't know sylphids could produce light that bright." "We're not supposed to. It's an emergency defense mechanism." Lura's translator conveyed exhaustion. "Like your smile, We prefer to use it for communication, not defense. Sarah laughed. Well, I'm glad you broke tradition. You saved my life. You saved mine first, Lura pointed out. Though I'm beginning to think humans have a dangerous habit of studying things that want to eat them. How else would we learn about them? Sarah grinned, then grew serious as she checked Lura's injuries. But that light display took a lot out of you. Try to rest until rescue arrives. Outside, the stalkers paced in the darkness, but they kept their distance now. Perhaps they had learned something new about their prey, that even herbivores could be dangerous when protecting their friends, and that humans were at their most impressive when they had someone to protect. As they waited for rescue, Sarah realized something had changed. Lura was no longer flinching at her teeth when she smiled. Sometimes, she reflected, it took facing real predators to understand who your true friends were. The rescue shuttle arrived just as dawn began to break over Proxima's purple forest. After a quick medical check, the team transported Sarah, Lura, and James to the main research base. The stalkers melted away into the shadows, but Sarah noticed they kept watching until the shuttle was out of sight. Now, sitting in the base's medical bay, Sarah watched as doctors examined Lura. The sylphid's injuries were stable, but using her emergency light display had drained her energy reserves dangerously low. You need to eat, Sarah said, reaching into her pack for her last protein bars. And get some sunlight. The medical bay's window faced east, catching the first rays of Proxima's red sun. The doctors had positioned Lura's bed directly in the light. Her tendrils stretched toward the warmth, but their glow remained weak. The light here is different from my homeworld, Lura explained. Less nutritious. She accepted the protein bar with a tendril, her movements slow and tired. Tell me about your world, Sarah said, pulling up a chair. It might help keep your mind off the injuries. Lura's amber eyes brightened slightly. My home orbits a yellow star, like your Earth. The light there is perfect for photosynthesis. Our cities are built in great crystal towers that catch and spread the sunlight. In spring, when the whole population blooms together, her voice turned wistful. You bloom. Sarah leaned forward with scientific interest. Like flowers. Similar, but more. Lura searched for the right words. More meaningful. It's how we share emotions, memories, even knowledge. All our tendrils glow with shared light, connecting the whole community. That sounds beautiful, Sarah said softly. It is. Lura's tendrils drooped. I was traveling to study other species' communication methods when the pirates attacked. I never expected to learn so much from a... She paused. From a carnivore. Sarah grinned. From a human, Lura corrected. You know, when I first saw your teeth, I thought they were just for hunting. But you use them for smiling, for showing friendship, just like we use our light for more than defense. Sarah nodded. Things aren't always what they seem. Humans learned that lesson many times when we first started exploring space. We made a lot of wrong assumptions about other species. Like what? Well, there was the time we met the Arcturians. We thought they were trying to attack us because they kept shooting plasma bursts at our ships. Sarah chuckled at the memory. Turns out that's how they say hello. The plasma bursts carry complex chemical messages. We spent 6 months preparing for war before someone finally figured it out. Lura's wind chime laugh filled the room. And now the Arcturians are some of our closest allies. They think it's hilarious that we were so scared of their greeting. Sarah unwrapped another protein bar for herself. That's why I became a xenobiologist. I wanted to help prevent those kinds of misunderstandings. By studying dangerous predators. Lura's translator conveyed a teasing tone. By studying everything. Knowledge helps overcome fear. Sarah took a bite of her bar. Like how I know these protein bars are made from synthesized plant proteins, carefully balanced for maximum nutrition. Not very tasty, but they keep you alive. Actually, Lura said, examining her half-eaten bar, I find the taste quite pleasant, like young shoots in spring. She tilted her head curiously. If humans can eat both plants and meat, why make food from just plants? Some humans prefer not to eat meat for ethical reasons, others for environmental ones. Some just like the taste of plants better. Sarah shrugged. Like I said before, humans are all about choices. Choices. Lura's tendrils swayed thoughtfully. On my world, we believe everything has its proper place, its proper role. Herbivores eat plants, carnivores eat meat, and each species stays in its assigned category. And humans don't fit into any category. Sarah finished. No, you don't. You're predator and protector, scientist and survivor. Lura's tendrils began to glow a little brighter. When you fought the stalkers, you didn't use just strength or teeth. You used knowledge, technology, strategy. And I had help. Sarah added, looking meaningfully at Lura. Your light display saved my life. Yes, but Lura's bark-like skin shifted in what Sarah now recognized as her thinking pattern. I used my light as a weapon, which isn't its proper purpose. By my people's beliefs, that would be wrong. But it saved you, so how could it be wrong? Sarah leaned back in her chair. Maybe the purpose of anything, teeth, light, knowledge, depends on how you choose to use it, not on what others say it should be used for. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the red sunlight creep across the medical bay floor. Lura's tendrils gradually began to glow stronger as she absorbed the light and digested the protein bars. Sarah, Lura said suddenly, could you smile for me? What? I want to see your teeth, not as weapons, but as they really are, your way of showing friendship. Sarah gave her biggest, warmest smile. To her delight, Lura's tendrils brightened in response, creating a soft, peaceful glow that reminded Sarah of Earth's sunrise. You're blooming, Sarah observed. Not exactly. This is more like a small personal bloom. Like your smile, it's a way of showing happiness. Lura extended a tendril toward Sarah. Among my people, sharing light is how we mark the beginning of a friendship. Sarah carefully touched the glowing tendril, feeling its gentle warmth. I'm honored, though I'm afraid I can't glow back. Your smile is light enough, Lura said, though I still think those teeth could use some decorative covers. Perhaps small gems, or... Don't push it, Sarah laughed. Their moment was interrupted by a doctor entering with test results. Good news, she announced. The protein bars and sunlight have stabilized your energy levels, Lura. A few more hours of rest, and you should be strong enough for transfer to your people's medical facility. Thank you, Lura said. Then, to Sarah's surprise, she added, but I'd like Dr. Chen to accompany me, if possible. I think my people could benefit from her unique perspective. Your people would allow a carnivore in their medical facility? Sarah asked. Lura's tendrils swayed with amusement. After today, I think we need to revise our definition of what a carnivore is, and perhaps revise a few other definitions as well. As the red sun rose higher over the research base, its light caught Sarah's smile and Lura's glowing tendrils, creating patterns that danced across the medical bay walls. Two different species, using different ways to express the same thing. The joy of understanding blooming between them. 6 weeks had passed since the crash, and Sarah stood nervously outside the great crystal spire of the Sylphid Medical Center. The building rose like a massive prism into the yellow sunlight of Lura's homeworld, splitting the light into rainbow patterns that danced across the plant-like architecture. Stop fidgeting, Lura said, her tendrils swaying with amusement. You face down a pack of stalkers, but meeting my people makes you nervous. Stalkers are predictable. Politics aren't. Sarah adjusted her diplomatic uniform for the 10th time. She was the first human ever invited to speak at the Sylphid High Council about updating their xenobiology records. What if they don't want to change their views about humans? Then smile at them, Lura suggested. It worked on me. Sarah laughed, but quickly covered her mouth when she saw other sylphids passing by. Some drew back at the sight of her, their tendrils curling defensively. Don't hide, Lura said firmly. That's the whole point of today. No more hiding who we are. Inside the council chamber, hundreds of sylphids sat in rising crystal tiers that caught and amplified the sunlight. Their combined bioluminescence created patterns of light that rippled through the room like waves. Sarah realized they were communicating, sharing thoughts about her presence. The head counselor, whose tendrils glowed with deep blue wisdom light, spoke first. Dr. Sarah Chen of Earth, you stand before us because one of our own claims you have demonstrated that our understanding of humans is incomplete. Sarah took a deep breath. Respected council, 6 weeks ago, I met Lura when her pod crashed on Proxima. She was terrified of me because your records labeled humans as dangerous carnivores. Are you claiming you are not carnivorous? Another counselor challenged. No, I'm saying being carnivorous, or omnivorous in our case, doesn't define who we are. Sarah gestured to Lura. Just as being herbivorous doesn't define who you are. Lura used her light as a weapon to save me, proving that any ability can be used in different ways. Murmurs and flashing lights filled the chamber. Sarah continued, her voice growing stronger. Humans can eat meat, yes. We have teeth that can tear flesh, but we can also choose not to. We can use those same teeth to smile, to show friendship. We can use our predatory instincts to protect instead of hunt. She pulled out her tablet and displayed images of Earth. On our world, we have humans who eat only plants, who dedicate their lives to healing, to understanding other species. We have others who hunt, who eat meat, who protect our colonies from genuine threats. We contain multitudes of choices, and that's what makes us human. The head counselor's tendrils swayed thoughtfully. You speak of choice, but nature gives each species its role, its purpose. Nature gave us adaptability. Sarah countered. The ability to change, to choose our purpose. And isn't that true of your people too? She turned to the assembly. Your light evolved for communication, but Lura used it to save my life. Was that wrong? It was not its proper purpose, one counselor argued. Its purpose was to help a friend. Lura spoke up, just as Sarah's knowledge of predators, knowledge you would say a healer shouldn't have, helped her protect me. Her tendrils began to glow brighter. We say everything must stay in its proper category, but what if that belief itself is holding us back? To Sarah's amazement, Lura began to bloom. Her tendrils lit up with memories, sharing images of their time together. Sarah treating her wounds, fighting off the stalkers, sharing food and knowledge. Other sylphids gasped as the emotions carried with these memories washed over them. Feel what I felt, Lura told her people. The fear when I first saw her teeth, the surprise when she used them to smile, the trust that grew between us, the joy of discovering that sometimes the best things happen when we step outside our assigned roles. One by one, other sylphids began to bloom in response, sharing their own stories of encounters with humans. A scientist who collaborated with Earth researchers, a trader who shared meals with human merchants, a student who learned human music. Each story showed humans defying simple classification. The head counselor raised his tendrils for silence. Dr. Chen, approach. Sarah walked forward, trying to project confidence. The head counselor's tendrils reached out, asking permission to share light with her. She nodded, and felt a warm glow touch her face. I sense no deception in you, he said finally. Only curiosity, courage, and care for life in all its forms. He turned to the council. Perhaps it is time we created new categories, or better yet, learned to see beyond categories entirely. The chamber erupted in flashing lights and musical tones of agreement. Sarah felt Lura's tendril gently squeeze her hand. The xenobiology records will be updated, the head counselor announced. Humans will no longer be classified simply as carnivores, but as, how did you put it, Dr. Chen? Adaptable, Sarah suggested. Creative, full of potential for both destruction and protection, depending on the choices we make. Yes, and in honor of this new understanding, we invite you to establish a permanent research exchange between our peoples. The head counselor's tendrils glowed with formal light. Unless you think studying with herbivores is beneath a predator species. Sarah recognized the joke and smiled her biggest smile, no longer hiding her teeth. I would be honored. Though I have one small request. Yes. Could we start by studying those protein bars Lura likes so much? I think they taste terrible, but she can't get enough of them. The chamber filled with wind chime laughter and glowing tendrils. Even the most conservative counselors couldn't help but join in. Later, as they walked through the crystal gardens of the medical center, Lura nudged Sarah. You did well in there. Though I think comparing the council to stalkers was a bit much. At least stalkers didn't make me wear a formal uniform. Sarah tugged at her collar. So ready to help me update Earth's records about sylphids. Fair is fair, after all. What do your records say about us? That you're a peaceful, photosynthetic species that never uses their light except for communication. Sarah grinned. Nothing about how you can blind predators when you need to. Lura's bark-like skin shifted in embarrassment. Perhaps we all have something to learn about looking past first impressions. They stopped at a crystal balcony overlooking the city. The yellow sun was setting, making the crystal towers glow like flames. Somewhere in the gardens below, a group of young sylphids were playing with a human child from the diplomatic corps, their combined laughter and light creating a new kind of harmony. You know what's funny? Sarah said, watching them. When we first met, you thought I was going to eat you. Now you're stuck with me as a permanent research partner. Yes, Lura agreed, her tendrils glowing with friendship light. Though I still think we should discuss those teeth decorations. Sarah's answering laugh echoed through the crystal gardens, bright and clear as any sylphid bloom. Above them, the sun continued its eternal dance, shining equally on herbivore and omnivore, on those who glowed and those who smiled, on all the wonderful, impossible categories that life refused to stay inside of. And somewhere in the vastness of space, other misunderstandings waited to become friendships, other fears waited to become jokes, and other differences waited to become strengths. All it took was the willingness to look past the surface and the courage to smile at the unknown.